We feel like it's very diverse, which makes it very interesting. It feels kind of a melting pot.
There's really not much diversity, to be honest. I think we could definitely use some more cultural events.
I did visit the homestead. I don't know that much about it, but I did visit it.
Narratives.
Standing between planners and designers and the sites on which they hope to act are socially embedded narratives.
Places are never empty.
And while these narratives can be ignored, they cannot be wholly erased. Places are never empty. One's own race
Hatred
is
or
superior and has the right
intolerance
to
of
rule
another
others.
race.
Of course, this was the road that supposedly led to the north and the slave cabins. Some of the old beams from the cabin. You can see the structure here. According to the family story, he was a houseboy. He would have been a house servant, so he was a young boy and he would have run errands and things like that. He's working as a field hand, he's planting, he's sowing, he's doing all sorts of field, sort of farming duties. So cleans the house, he scours the floor, he fixes her breakfast when she runs the cook off.
How many hours would he work in the field?
Probably sun up to sundown.
Slavery. Bondage.
With Thomas Hale of Alachua County. He talks about having married into the Chestnut family and learning that the Chestnut women were opposed to slavery. But as a woman, in her day, she wouldn't have been in a position to do anything about it. But as a woman, in her day, she wouldn't have been in a position to do anything about it. The Hale family story was that she taught them to read and write. And
owners of this country
in fact,
don't want
didn't use that on our tours, because we really didn't have anything other than the family story that said that. And we didn't want it to look as though we were somehow trying to make it appear that was somehow okay, the fact that they owned slaves. So they taught them to read and write. They were still slaves. They didn't have their freedom. A paddy roller is fracturing of the word patroller. They were patrollers, people who were patrolling the roads. So there were men who were appointed by the county commission, some of whom were plantation owners.
Obedient workers.
The Chestnuts were patrollers. They were appointed to patrol the roads.
They own and control
the prior to emancipation. They would look for slaves who were off their plantations, and the slaves had to have a pass. If they didn't have a pass, then they were reportedly beaten sometimes, and some of these former slaves referred to these paddy rollers, and that if they didn't have their pass, they'd be beaten, and they would be returned to their plantation.
You had no choice.
You also have stories of just absolute viciousness and mean and evil people.
The horrors of the news. They would call me nigger, they would call me puto, chongo. I walked through the door, that's when they grabbed me, put the noose around my neck and started choking me with it.
Some did talk about being beaten by their owners. One in particular talked about her mistress having ordered some sort of like a riding crop and testing it on her back.
These were brutes.
Nameless men.
These were niggers.
Person not responsible for what color they are. I've always taught all of my kids that.
Power.
Slavery. Bondage.
Hatred. Intense animosity or hostility. Intense dislike or extreme aversion or
mean and evil people. On very, very hard times, some of them were very adamant in that being free and being poor was much preferable to having food and clothing and shelter and being a slave.
I am offended that the culture that developed and built and paid for this country is now being put at the back of the bus, so to speak, because for some reason or another, all these lower cultures and lower races are more important, and I find that disgusting.
Person not responsible for what color they are.
Toil. Drudgery.
There's really not much diversity.
What do you think about the diversity here?
I feel like it's very diverse.
Trying to incorporate
Very interesting, but it feels kind of a melting pot.
Yes, but it does get the tar baby fixed up. Red rabbit, wait for the tar baby to say.
The phrase, however, can be used as a slur against blacks.
it feels like a small community, so you get to know everyone, and it feels like a kind of a small town atmosphere.
Consumption. It's the new national pastime. Fuck
the owners
the
of this
only
country
true,
know the
lasting
truth.
American
It's
value
called the
that's
American
left.
dream.
Buying
But
things.
you have to be asleep to believe it.
Folks, real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions.
Just look at this and what this represents. When I hold this up, when I see this, I think of my ancestors.
Racism, discrimination.
Hometown feeling in here, to be, part of a community. All the shopkeepers, everybody is very outgoing, very friendly, and and of course the market thing is just a real, we look forward to that every fall, every season when it comes.
Forget the politicians. That's what the owners count on. The fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never be fixed. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care.